John 10:27 says, "My sheep hear my voice. I know them and they follow me." So how do we know anyone's voice? We know people because we have relationships with them. We talk to them, we listen to them, we see their patterns throughout our relationship history. And so we understand when they're speaking to us, this is how they usually treat me. And so we want to approach God and hearing his voice in the same way that we would approach anyone's voice. So I understand my husband's voice and how my husband feels about me and what he thinks about me because I've seen how he has treated me over the course of our marriage. If I were to get a phone call and it were a man claiming to be my husband and he said all kinds of hateful things and was rude to me, then I would understand that wasn't my husband because it didn't align with how he's always treated me. If we're asking how to hear the voice of God, we want to go back and familiarize ourselves with his promises and what he says to us throughout his word. And as we do that, we'll start to understand this is the way that God treats his people. This is the way he shows love to his people. This is the way that he makes promises and keeps his promises. And as we start to understand that, we understand when our thoughts maybe aren't aligning with God's words and that maybe that isn't the voice of God and maybe that's actually our own voice or the voice of the enemy. I would say the best way to understand and hear the voice of God is to get to know him better. And then once we know him, we can start to practice that. Because I think it's not going to help you to hear God's voice if you're not ready to respond to God's voice. And so I think the easiest way to start doing that is by asking him to help you in the very small things, like when he's asking you to love your children, or maybe he's asking you to ask for forgiveness from a friend that you've hurt. As we start to hear God's voice in those small ways and we begin to respond to those things, we build that level of faith and that level of trust. And so that when God asks us to listen for his voice in matters that are much bigger and have much greater consequences or much greater weight on our life, we are more comfortable trusting him because we have built that level of trust in as we've practiced hearing God's voice.